in on this Sunday night. It takes a brave man to do a podcast an hour before kickoff on Super Bowl Sunday, but I am that kind of guy. So I don't know how many folks are going to show up for this. Um, I do want you to know that for showing up, I always will give you my greatest appreciation, my thanks for taking a little bit of your time to spend some time with me here and listen to my rantings and ravings. How is everybody doing out there? Authentic Alpha One, interesting question. Well, let's see if I can come up with an interesting answer for it. Scott, how you doing, Scott? Mr. Watson, hello, sir. How are you doing? Good to have you guys. Glad you were able to make it again. Like I said, it really takes a brave guy to do a live stream before Super Bowl Sunday, but kickoff. But honestly, until I spoke to my brother, I had no idea that actually today was Super Bowl Sunday. It tells you how much I keep track of those kind of things. But I understand that kickoff is in an hour, so I will make brevity my best friend today. Keep it short and sweet. But I do have a topic I do want to talk about. Mr. Muter, how are you doing? Good evening. Good to have you here. Really good to see you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to show up, guys. Um, really, really appreciate it. Anything interesting going on? Not really. I saw an interesting, I guess to kick this off, while we wait for more people to show up in the live stream. Kick this off. I've never watched the Super Bowl, Michael Watson. Neither have I. I have to be frank with you. I've watched a few halftime shows back in the past, but I've never sat down and watched a full football match my entire life. Um, that's just the truth of it. And interestingly enough, I find European football to be actually far more interesting because I have to tell you, I was watching that Beckham documentary, and say what you want about him. Uh, when he kicked that ball exactly to the guy that he wanted to, like a half a mile away, I was pretty impressed with that. I don't know why with quarterbacks, I'm like, he threw the ball to that guy, whatever. So that's just me. I loathe the American football. Yeah, I don't loathe it, but again, I'm not impressed with it as much as I am with European football because, like I said, I've seen some moves and some passes and some kicks and some goals that are actually quite impressive, quite impressive. So I will say that much. I hope this doesn't disqualify my American credentials, but it is the truth. Han says, I'm too old for this show. It's too late. Yeah, well, I'm just glad you're here, sir. Just glad to have you guys here. Stop asking. Oh, well, the YouTube video that I saw. Apparently, a few months in, surprise, 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 those Squire debut Stratocasters are starting to show really bad issues with really bad fret sprout, tuner issues, wiring connection issues, the different things that I'm reading about those things. And I really, really wonder to myself, how could this be? Because the CV was such a hit. I mean, it was a huge hit. Never heard any of those complaints about the C. I owned a CV. I think I owned two of them at one point, and great guitars. It's interesting to me. I wonder, made in the same factory in Indonesia, as I seem to recall. So don't know what's going on with that, but I found that interesting. Let me move over here. Why am I straining my eyes over there? Um, uh, Dime Store Liam. Hey, Dime Store, how you doing? Welcome to the chat, man. Thank you so much for tuning into the live stream, and thank you so much for contributing here to the chat. Hey, um, let me see. Let me actually, guys, let me do a refresh here. Some reason my big monitor is not picking up the chat. There we go. All right. Dime Store Liam says, I am also American and feel the same about football. Hey, man, I'm just saying. Well, I've been out of the States for quite a while now, but even when I was there, I really never was a fan of it. I have to be honest with you. It just wasn't my thing. The movie Rudy is the only good thing about football. Actually, that is a good movie. I'll get that. That I agree with. What happened with Los Polos Hermanos? Uh, no answer to that one. My new guitar is being exchanged due to Sprout. Interesting. Wow. This time of year, because the exterior temperature and the interior temperature is so different, you're going to experience a certain amount of sprouting. It comes when the wood contracts. However, that being said, in the cases in this one guy's video I was watching, he's a luthier. He knows how to work on guitars, at least to the same extent that like I would, and probably to Fern's level. And he just said, "Hey, I just dressed these frets. Just a few days later, they're always starting to sprout," which shows that there's a problem with the wood itself. Some of this wood, well, they dry the wood by throwing it into a kiln. The old way it used to be done is it used to be air dried. They don't do that anymore. And when you have these kiln dried necks, um, you know, they will give you fret sprout problems if it's overdone in the kiln. That much I do know. Dime Store Lynn said, "Thanks, brother. This time I didn't miss it." Yes, sir. And Princess Halftime Show. Whoa, that's funny that you should do the second part. You know who else has said that to me tonight? Because I asked my brother, because I always call him on Sunday, and before the live stream, and I said, "Are you going?" He was like my sister, getting ready to watch the show, and the football match. And I said, "Are you going to watch the halftime?" And he said, "Eh." He says, "That guy's no Prince," which is such a wild thing to hear my brother say, because I never, my brother always seems somewhat indifferent to Prince, to be honest with you. Although he knows a lot of, he listened to a lot of great music when we were growing up. But now everybody just generally acknowledges that, and that's great, as it should be, as it should be. You got to stop asking yourself if you're too old for music. 'Cause you have to realize that, if it's your experience didn't fail you, the system did. Experience didn't fail you, the system did. And this is going to touch into a little bit what I get into at times about how the old gatekeeper system had its perks. Now I know, Mike, you're saying, "Hey, Mike, you've been rough on them. You you have certainly peeled apart and showed the dark side of the industry." But there are structural things that were set up during that period of time that were beneficial. You still get screwed, but not like now. They're beneficial to just about everybody. And they created kind of an open market, something we no longer have. Dime Star Liam says age helps with fret sprout. My '09 J brace gets it a bit. Yeah, after time, the wood kind of, with the older vintage Japanese guitars that I was bringing in, importing, all of them from the '70s mostly. Fret sprout wasn't an issue anymore. At some point, that wood starts to, I guess, wood ambers. Now, at 50 years, after 50 years, that wood gets kind of settled, and you really don't get that kind of fret spot. Even my Fender Jazz bass, um, I after when it got to the 20-year mark, I didn't have that issue anymore. Um, but these neurotransmitters, I think it's a little bit more than just regular temperature and humidity issues with the Fred spout that's happening. I think got a bad batch of necks. There's a great documentary about Prince's Super Bowl halftime show. Mike, what, if anything, would happen if you put a guitar in a pressure vessel or a strong vacuum environment? It it's just like anything else, it's going to condense down as far as the density of the molecules allow. It's, would be my best guess. Because different things have different densities, and different densities are going to, smush a little bit differently. Some are going to compress to dust. Some of them, like coal, will compress down eventually over eons of time, they tell you, into diamonds. Um, so I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube recently. It's weird. A lot of producers my age, they're all coming on saying, "Oh, you're never too old for music," or you're not out of the game if you're in your 30s or 40s, or you know, you're never too old to do this. And I, being the contrarian that I am, look at statements like that, and I think to myself, fellas, you're really, really, really looking at this the wrong way, without any question. You're not asking the right questions because you're not framing the question correctly in the first place. If age disqualified you from music, think of it this way. Let's reframe this. If age disqualified you from music, most people running the music business would be out of the building. Because last time I looked, Mo Austin was not a young man. You know, I'll leave it at that. Uh, you know, David Geffen, not a young man. And yet these guys are still running things. So what does that mean? That means that you're framing it wrong. You're framing things wrong. You're looking at it a little bit incorrectly. Catch up here in the chat. I have a friend that's very dense in any environment. That's a good one, Kit Kats. Welcome to. Good to have you here. That's a good one. You don't watch Super Bowl? No, no, man, I don't. I have to be honest with you, sir. And thank you for chatting as well in the chat. Um, what do we got here? Free, free rock. Welcome, sir. No, not really. Never did. Never did. That was a funny one, Kit Kat. YouTube is flooded with all these "Are you too old?" videos, and the fact is that people asking that says more about the industry than the artist. Because again, you know, why are you framing that kind? Why are you having that kind of thought? You know, it's naming the anxiety being old. That's because that's what it is. Let's get let's psychoanalyze this a little bit. We can do that for a minute. The anxiety is being old. So you're naming the anxiety without validating the lie. And what's the lie? The lie is that you're too old, or that you should even consider age being a factor in this in the first place. You know, the anxiety is being old. And that's something that I think we could all understand. Algorithms really reward youth, speed, and visibility. Churning it out, churning it out, churning it out. Platforms confuse attention with value. TikTok, YouTube, to the most part, but mostly TikTok. They confuse attention, again, that speed and that visibility with value. We talked about that, the quality of what's being done. This churning out is a race to the bottom. People mistake algorithm as being the overseer, and if the algorithm isn't paying attention to you, then this is some kind of personal failure. Okay. So, again, reframing the idea, you're not aging out of music, you're aging out of platforms that were never designed to care about you. Boom, there it is, really. Because these platforms, these algorithms that, YouTube and TikTok and the others are really designed for youth, speed, and visibility. Whatever, if it's just some person, doing some dance of the week or whatever, and as long as it's got that youth and those other aspects to it, the algorithm is really geared towards that. So it's not that you're aging out of music, it's just that you're trying to compete on platforms that the algorithm really wasn't designed for you. And you look at that algorithmic neglect as being failure. You look at it as being failure. You equate that to being failure. Now, the old industry, the gatekeeper industry, used to reward experience, and this is where I was talking about the old gatekeeping system. Used to have its perks. It used to have its plus points because it used to reward experience. Okay, gotta be frank with you. The guys, when I went to all the major studios, Brad Gilderman, a lot of those other guys, a lot of those other engineers in the big studios that I either got a chance to second or and they had two second engineers. Be one of the second engineers, and um, those guys were in their 40s and 50s. The mixing engineers were in their 40s and 50s mostly. And think of the Bob Clear Mountains and guys of that nature. Okay. And Andy Johns, people like that. And that industry was set up so that if you moved your way through that, if you apprenticed, under one of these guys, that you would move in one of those positions as you aged up. So it didn't reward youth for youth's sake. That was a different part of it. Maybe that was on the band, like if you were in the Monkees, I guess, I suppose. But even those guys weren't as young as they were being portrayed. But certainly in the backside, back where the work is done, uh, it was older guys. Who was the Beatles producer? Was it a young guy or an old guy? Even then. Hey, you see what I'm saying? So let me catch up here. Miles Davis and Lightning Hopkins played until they died. Like so many others, that's good enough for me. Yeah, I got nothing to say about that. In my mind, Scott says, I'm picturing a Far Side comic strip where a guitar player finds the fountain of youth, but unfortunately, right next to it is the fountain of tone. That's a good one. Seahawks. Okay, we've established who we're rooting for tonight, I suppose. A&R guys, the even the editors at Rolling Stone magazine, um, these guys were tastemakers. They were the tastemakers. Like it or not, agendas or not, these guys were the one out there that were on the Sunset Strip on a Thursday night listening to bands. And these guys, like Azoff and some of the others, took that AR position and that judgment and that taste, that experience, and turned it into being presidents of the large uh, recording industry like Warner and Sony and all the other old school back in the day uh, companies that you could go into with get a contract with, and they sat at the top based upon the fact that they had years and years and years of experience in the A&R scene, artist and repertoire. They were doing that for years and years and years, and they developed a sense of judgment and taste. And they knew, even though they were older guys, thus dispelling that myth that you have to be young to know what young people like. No, you have to, of course, have you have a pulse on things, regardless of your age. But at the same time, you have to know what's good, what everybody's going to like. If everybody likes it, it goes from there. And they were able to monetize that experience. And again, if you were starting out in the studio system, if I had stayed in the States, my trajectory, the way that I was doing it, was to eventually work my way into being a engineer, recording engineer. And really my dream was to be a mixing engineer, which I did a few records. And you but that was a career that I could look at and I could see from the guys above me the trajectory of that career and if it was something that you could truly monetize. And it was. But unfortunately, the experience, certainly my experience and the experience of all these other people that I named, didn't disappear. What disappeared was the invoice. In other words, that system, again, is another component to that old system that worked. It had logic and it had been built over decades of that system. And it got swept away, which feels like to me now, probably it wasn't if I sat down and really thought about it, but it feels like overnight. It just disappeared. Matty Two Hats, how goes it with you, sir? Glad to have you here, man. Welcome, welcome. I'm really surprised you guys are all here. I said to myself tonight, I'd be surprised if one or two people show up because it's Super Bowl time and people go nuts off that stuff. I myself, again, like I said, kickoff here is going to be in a bit. I'm I'm going to bed. I do not care. Imagine, no, I couldn't imagine that. Staying up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and not watch a football game. Nah. But I'm really happy that you guys showed up. What actually changed? Um, again, Maddie says, I watch Australian NRL, no other football. Yeah, we had that discussion earlier where I was saying that I've never watched a football game all the way through, period, much less the Super Bowl. I have watched a few of the halftime shows when I was interested, when it was somebody who interested me. You although, though, when Justin Bieber pulled off Janet Jackson, not Justin Bieber, when guy pulled off Janet Jackson's top that time, Justin Timberlake, I was like, yeah, even I was like, okay, I did not want to see that. That's not something I want to see. it was it was it was a bit much for me, but it was a halftime show. Oh my gosh. Steam streaming really just absolutely flattened value, man. Streaming. If you don't believe me, look at the news reports of that actress who put her house up for collateral so that she could uh, produce and complete on her own with her own money a movie that she had written, a script that she had written, and she lost her house because I think that the returns that she thought that she would get on an independent film, even if she sold it to streaming, were not they're pennies on the dollar what they used to be. And that's in the film industry, in the music industry. You can imagine because they were putting out more records than they were putting out movies. In other words, there's a issue there um, with it hitting everybody, but it hitting us harder and earlier. I talked about how DAWs and plugins and signing up to platforms is really just renting tools. I talked about that in the last live stream. And these subscription models, the disappearance of ownership, all of that stuff really disassociated the reality of what it meant to really put together a real record. Um, and again, unless you got robbed, unless somebody broke into your house and stole your physical equipment, you were good. Now they steal it on your laptop. They don't even have to break into your house. They can steal your plugins like that, your software like that. Okay. Don't believe me? I've had it happen. Some of you have had it happen to yourselves. And again, this industry doesn't have a talent problem, it has an ownership problem as a result. But really, streaming, I think, has been the killer. It's been the killer. It's been the real culprit. It really has been. And it just so many ways. And older musicians like myself, again, remember a time pre-streaming when you owned your masters and they were actual reels. I have some master tape reels in my parents' house in LA from back in the day. I still have my masters, especially from the stuff that I did with Motown. I did the song, but I was smart enough to know to own the masters of it. I own the masters of some of those songs that I did with some of those groups. Believe it or not, I own the masters of those. So you owned your own gear, as I was saying. You know, the software companies now just say, hey, you know what, guys, thank you so much for signing up to us, but we're done. We're going to go take a nice long vacation in the Maldives and turn the lights off here. So, pretty much, well, bye. you know, you owned your audience too, by the way. Um, an audience was something that you legitimately built from a grassroots level. Of course, some of them were manufactured, but there still had to be an interest there. It was the manufacturing only went so far. Only took you so far. You really had to have the goods once you had a whole room full of people staring at you. And you owned your audience as a result. And as a result of that, they'd buy your merchandise, they'd buy your records, your CDs, your cassette tapes, your 8 tracks, your posters. go to your concerts, you know. And younger musicians today never had any bass line like that. They don't know that world. They don't know what that world is about. And older musicians can come across sounding bitter. And that's why I caution to them, guys my age, about saying, you're never too old to be, a musician or, to make a difference. Because it has, again, an anxiety unnamed in it, as well as you can frame it in such a way that you can almost sound a little bitter. And speaking about how the system used to be can also make you sound a little bitter as well. But it it's not that you're being bitter or you should come across it. You should just say, hey, I just remember how it used to work. And how it used to work was better for the artist, for the record company, for the consumer. It was better. Um, I don't need to see Bad Bunny either. I had to be honest with you. I had to ask my brother who that was. Last time I stayed to watch football was when Ireland was in the World Cup almost 30 years ago. I think McGrath was the captain then. Well, yeah, that's probably the last time I watched it myself. Hello there, sir, to yourself. Maddie says, must be loads of stories like that. You know what blows my mind? Every year at NAM, there's a new channel strip for $4,000, but music in the marketplace is ultimately worth close to nothing. It's madness. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you for framing that so eloquently. Thank you, man. There is a profoundness in that statement that I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to we'll ride that one. Pick that bone clean. It is insane to me that the pro audio equipment is still being produced, frankly, at the level that it is. Because the amount of even private, small studios is getting smaller. And also the return of investment, because you're investing in that equipment to record things that the payoff is not there. And I really wonder. I saw a mixing board that is emulating the old Abbey Roads board, knob for knob. I mean, it looked like one of those old boards, where it looked like what Sulu used to steer the Enterprise with, and not faders, but you know. And I said, "Who's buying this? Who wants this? What guy has a hard on for a retro board like this? Because there's so many retro Beatles bands, cover bands out there that they need to put out albums. I really wonder myself, Maddie. That's a great point. CDR was the best for me. I agree. The majority of recording studios here are just personal studios that people try to recoup their losses by making it a business, and collectively they contribute zero to the music industry. Yeah. Again, then you say, okay, well, let me do audio editing and recording for other things, and you're right. It's just there's no money in it, and it does not justify the cost of the equipment. When when a place like Sunset Sound back in the day was billing rooms on a 24-hour cycle to the record companies at $500 an hour, and guys like Prince were doing that for Keep a Place for years. You could see how there is a system there. Again, that's done with. You don't have that kind of symbiotic relationship between the record company and the studios anymore. That's why studios like Sunset Sound are in trouble, and a lot of them have closed. A lot of the record plants, they're gone. Um, Again, it's just not there. I saw something shiny and missed the show up to here. That's all right, Ben. I'm gonna rewind to start, but wanted to say hi, y'all. Hey, how you doing, sir? Welcome. I saw something shiny. Um, experience still wins when you create a niche audience and when you create physical media, which I've done. And when you do long form content as opposed to short form noise. I don't want to be, down on it. If you guys notice, I haven't shot a lot of regular content recently, and I actually got a better camera than even the one I had before. I found a good Fujifilm XQ2, and I have lighting and camera and all that. As a matter of fact, a professional photographer recently asked me if he could borrow one of my lights, and I said sure. I got all that stuff, but I don't want to create short form noise. If I don't have something stunningly brilliant to say, I won't say it, because a lot of the guitar YouTube channels are starting to really, it's like Groundhog Day, man. Look at this guitar. Look at this guitar. Look at this guitar. And to be frank with you, they all starting to look like the same guitar. And part of that is, when you're starting out, you get in that trap. Well, I've got to have a new guitar, so that means I'm going to buy the cheaper ones. And then you end up having a room full of cheap guitars or cheaper guitars, inexpensive guitars. Try not to say cheap. Well, some of them are cheap, but it just is not something that I'm interested in. So I am interested in creating long form content like these podcasts, um, because this algorithm isn't going to reward me for experience, as I pointed out. It's only going to reward me for youth. Well, I'm out of that. Well, that's okay. So I take my experience, to tell you the truth, over that youth at this point. And um, also, because it's a turnover kind of speed thing, and I don't want to do that because, again, that's just short form noise, then I don't have to worry about that. I'm free of that as well. So, really, stop asking the wrong question. Stop asking, you know, that question. Start asking, what do I actually control? What do I control? Well, I can't control my age. What I can control is the quality of my content, um, with the experience that I bring to it. So, again, reframe that question. Reframe that question. Stop asking if you're too old for music. Like, I found that Japanese album I was looking for last time. Yeah, I saw it. I saw that. I'm not familiar with that. The guy laying on his side, in the grass field. I'm not familiar. I listened to the first track. I actually dig it, and I bookmarked it here, and I have it in my bookmark. And I meant to listen to it this weekend, but I didn't. In my free minute, but I didn't have one. So, another sad story in itself. But I'm gonna listen to that, man, and I really want to say thank you for finding that link and sharing that with me. Because to be frank with you, I dig those old Japanese albums. I like, check out. Hold on. Um, let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, here it is. So if you want to listen to another great Japanese artist or an artist who did music in Japan, I talked about him a lot, Bernard Eigner. So I'm going to share this link with you guys. This is his name, but just look at the work that he did. This is a track that he recorded with a Japanese band, but this is a person that you should look up. You should take a look into his work because his one of the his Everything Must Change album that he recorded in Japan is one of the finest recordings I've ever heard. Sonically, musically, compositions, lyrically, just really great music. Um, let alone podcast. My God, they say nothing. Yeah, you nail it every week, Mike. Thank you, Maddie. I appreciate it. The thing is, though, you can get sufficient equipment to record old school for not that much money. It depends upon what you want to do. Anyone who has seen the Snake Pit at Motown will say, "Oh yeah, yeah." Again, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with this, DAW plug in the box recording. I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not laying down another note. I'm not hitting record and play on anything until I get hardware equipment. And because I have my own business and and it has its ups and downs, that's not a priority with me. So, you know, but when you look into it, yeah, you can get a setup pretty inexpensively these days. I think that you could get a decent setup for around $1,000 if you buy the right things. That's the hardware. You need yourself mic preamp, presser, um, and hopefully some kind of 24 track hard disk recorder that has also some limiting capacity to it and maybe some other mic pre's in it as well. You can get that stuff secondhand. Um, did I miss that? Oni, when you hop off your live, come over on mine. I'm running a 24/7. You can raise money for my next album. Pop anytime, vibe with the music, and feel free to let me know if I'm trash. You are not trash. Only the artist. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll cruise over, man. You're always welcome, and thank you for chiming in. We share the love over here, man. We share the gravy. There's not a lot of it, but you're welcome to how much you can take. Um, so reframe the question. What do I actually control? And try to find people who still value depth of expression. What do I own? Ask yourself that. A lot of these artists, they may have the contracts, but they don't own their music. I'd rather own 100% of something than, pennies on the dollar of nothing really. And ask yourself, am I building things that will survive these platforms? See, that's another way of looking at it. Platforms disappear tomorrow. Do you have something that would survive it? Nobody really asked that question that I've seen, that I've heard. And it's a very deep question. I'm not talking about an end of the world scenario. I'm talking about the real reality that, that these platforms are at the whim of the man. And the man can flip the switch on them at any time. And if your whole system is based on these platforms, then what do you have to show outside of them? What piece of work can you bring forward independently outside of these platforms and say, hey, I got this? Ask yourself that. Stop asking if you're too old for music. Start asking who the music is actually for. I said it before, I'll say it again. If you're writing and one person receives it, halfway across the world, next door, whatever, then it was worth it in that regard because one person received it, listened to it, appreciated it, and said, "Hey, I appreciate this. I appreciate the work that you put into it." Even hearing that from one person is a great start, and it's a great feeling because it means you did something. You did something. You um, and really think about that. One of the things about, and it was earlier stated that the CD era was the best. The record era was great too. Took up a lot more space. But the liner notes, again, the sequencing, the intention of the overall piece of work, all of those things get lost when you move into the singles era. uh, Let me put out a single every day. But again, the album was a format of expression. Imagine if books were written only a chapter here at a time, and maybe one chapter didn't have anything to do with another. It was just whatever the writer felt that week, and it just wouldn't work. You couldn't put it together into a cohesive piece. And the same thing with the singles era, is taking all those different singles and trying to make it into a cohesive album. As that rapper, what's her name? Ice Spice, as she found out with the complete failure of her album because it was all made up of singles that she had already previously had done with a few new material that was just vulgar and disgusting, and that somebody thought was a great idea, and it just doesn't work because it didn't start out as a cohesive album. Hey, I want to say this, you anywhere from Joni Mitchell's, songs to a Seagull to Usher's Confession. Those were albums that had themes to them. They had themes to them about real things that people, it wasn't singles. And that's a big difference. That's a big difference when you're approaching writing the music. I got a 36 track digital Tascam recorder for 350 or so on Marketplace. Yeah, Hans, that's what I'm talking about. You can find them. You can find them. And when I get some free bread, I gotta be honest with you. I hope to have it when I go to Japan because that's the place that I want to buy it at. I'm gonna go to one of those. I'm gonna some of my old spots. Try to see if I can find a recorder in one of those secondhand shops for cheap, and I'm gonna bring it back for sure. That's not a guitar, you know. If I can find, because I would like to get a neck. I'd like to get one of those old 70s necks if I could find one from a Tokai or a Greco. Tokai, really, a neck. But for my parts caster. But other than that, to be honest, I like the neck that's on it already. But I'd like to get a maple neck. Anyway, um, I'm splitting hairs there, but definitely secondhand shops in Japan. But it can be found. It can be found for really cheap. And over there with the exchange rate, I'm hoping to get it even cheaper. You know, again, being a contrarian type that I am, I frame this question differently. You will never see me come out with a video saying you're never too old for music, guys, because it really it exposes a fear and anxiety that I don't have. I don't have. That's not where my anxieties these days are. Um, it's not in my age or my experience or what I can bring to the table. Um, don't play a game. Okay, let me frame it yet another way. It's not that you're too old, it's that you really shouldn't be playing a game that stop respecting you. You know, what is that they say? Play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Don't play in a game that has no respect for you. Why are you trying to play in that game? And it's just eating in because the algorithm isn't giving you any love, and then you're going to feel like you somehow failed. But again, you're looking at it wrong. You would rather have, I've built up a lovely audience of wonderful people here that like real music, you know. And some of them eventually, I hope, will reach over and buy one of these CDs that I have for sale. Some of them have, some of you have. But again, it's an audience that I build up of, and I respect what you guys bring to the table. It's a quality issue, quality issue. And again, this system, the algorithm system, does not respect quality. So why play that game? It's not the end of your career. The end of your career is when you take the big sleep. I've told you before. What is it? I have got to look that up because I keep quoting it, but I get it a little wrong. Hold on. I'm gonna have to get this and pin this. Oh, here we go. Hey everybody, let's have some fun. You live, you only live once, and when you're dead, you're done. So let the good times roll. You only live but once, and when you're dead, you're done. So let the good times roll. Honestly, seriously, you're not done. Your career is not over. You know, just this is not the end of your career. It's just the beginning of a smarter one or a different one, or uh, one that at least you can hold up your head high. I hold up my head high, but I know there's just a few people out there who are listening to the work that I've done and appreciating it. Then I've done my thing. And the other people that I watch, like you guys always should check out Scott's channel. He's always coming out with something, and it's again somebody being truly creatively expressive. It's something that's real. And again, let's support those things, and let's move away from the systems that again are not designed for us. You know, you don't see me, at 59 years old this year, going into a club on a Saturday night. It doesn't happen because that's not that algorithm is no longer for me. It's not for me, and I have no place there either. And you do not want to be that creepy old guy in the club. Although I have to admit, some of these girls have daddy complexes, but that's only going to end you up with an empty wallet and a bad back. So you got no business being there. You got no business trying to play these algorithm games with these streaming platforms because it is a losing game. Just got to think of a smarter, different career, different trajectory, a different way of looking at it, or scaled down version of what it used to be. You know, and I think you'll find out that you're a whole lot happier. I heard that the Grammys is the place for getting all ball 70s. I heard that Germany is the place for getting all ball 70s recording and hi-fi equipment, especially synthesizers. Oh yeah, man, those guys back in the 80s, Kraftwerk and all those other bands, synth bands that came out of there, that was a huge craze. And of that, came what I call the boom chicka boom chicka music, techno and things like that. But since, yeah, we've got a place down here down the street that sells vintage synthesizers. In my experience, if you're a musician, It's if you can if you it that is, you can't turn that off. I tried for 18 years, sold everything but 1 amp, but it was so horrible that I had to start playing again. Yeah, I understand. Can I turn it off? No. I heard somebody on TV saying something the other day, and it got me thinking, "Oh, that's a great lyric for a song." And I actually sat down and I thought of the whole thing. Actually started arranging it in my head, and I thought to myself, "Why are you doing this? You're not going to record this, But you can't stop. You can't turn that off. What you have to do, and you shouldn't either, because unless you have another area, like unless you want to become like Bob Ross and start painting. Another channel to channel that energy into. You know, it's like an old coach of mine used to say, when you got that all that energy for all those girls, channel that into something else, and you probably end up a lot better. And he was right. And so you do have to find a place to channel it if you stop. If you don't, and you don't have to, as I said, then you just have to find a new, smarter, you know, version of what it was to do before. And that's about that. All right, guys, it's 4 minutes to kick off for the Super Bowl. I want to end it here, as I said before. I want to thank all you guys for taking the time to show up. I'm gonna cut it off here because some people do want to get off to that, and actually, I'm gonna go to bed. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed and you're new here. Please take a look at the link that Scott put there and order one of my physical CDs or I actually the CD. Again, I'm anti-streaming, but you do get a free copy of the streaming edition of the album as well when you do that. And also, I'm thinking about, well, no, I'll leave that for another time. But anyway, take a look at that. Please support me in this channel by buying a CD or a stream. And I will see you guys this Wednesday coming up. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch. You guys be good. Bye bye.